And now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Canarsie.
And welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I am your host, Jeff Canarsie. It has been a busy fucking 3 weeks. Look at that, 20 seconds in and dropped the F word already. I'm going to try and work on that a little bit. Obviously, the last 3 weeks, give or take 2.5 weeks, I've been tied up with Joey Merlino trial. I would say probably to 90% of it. I missed the first couple of days, obviously. But as you know, Joey Merlino has walked. Mistrial was ordered by Judge Sullivan, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And when we come back from a break, we're going to get into the meaty parts of the trial, because I think that there's things that need to be talked about, things that the media didn't report, things that Jerry Capeci didn't report. And it seems like every day, either the New York Post or the Daily News would write the salacious shit, and they wouldn't write any facts. They wouldn't write, Jacobs had a great day in court defending Joey Merlino, or there was nothing about Rubio being a lying fuck, or Kreisberg not being credible, or Peter Lavaglia not being credible, how the tapes didn't support what the government's point of view was. This went from a gambling, racketeering, medical fraud thing to allegedly Joey Merlino being the boss of the Philadelphia Mafia. I don't know how if you're going to put somebody on trial for like a character assassination or for like a characterization that you're going to make about somebody, then if you're going to do that, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I think the same thing should be allowed of Rubio, Kreisberg, Lavaglio, and everybody else who seem to have something to say, including the FBI. One supervisory agent fired because of it. Another one reprimanded because of their miscalculations in the way they handled Rubio's bullshit. So, and I'm going to make an argument from a federal standpoint. And I believe, just off the top of my head really quick, it's Federal Rule 608 and Federal Rule 609. They sort of make each other look pretty stupid, and I'm going to get into what that federal rule states, because it's very important that you understand what this rule is about, and you also need to understand these two federal rules, 608 and 609, they directly deal with witnesses and informants, and whether you can attack somebody's character. Now, if you can attack Joey Merlino's character, and you can make assertions about him, then why can't you make them about witnesses? Why is it that Judge Sullivan repeatedly said, J.R. Rubio is not on trial here? Well, he should be. He should be. I have 12 bullet points to prove why his character is shit. I have 12 bulletproof, listen to me. I have 12 bullet points that show you what kind of person Rubio is. And listen, a lot of people are going to say this, and a lot of people have said this to me already, that I'm covering for people, I'm not acknowledging things. Everything that I've told you is a fact. If you don't believe me, go and ask anybody that was there. I'm one of the only people, and this isn't an ego thing. This isn't an ego thing, it's just an honest thing. I covered it for facts. Not one day did I sit in that trial and hear something that made me say, maybe Joey did something. I didn't hear a single shred of evidence. But yet, if you follow the Daily News and the New York Post, which are gossip columnists, they want to talk about other shit that has nothing to do with what we were there for. They didn't include facts, and when they did, they do what Capeci does. And they almost cover the FBI's ass every time. Oh, it was a tough day in court for Joey Merlino. When? Not one fucking day was I there where anybody looked at me and was like, ugh, what are we going to do? It was laughable. And so from my perspective, and I've said this on the record, and I'll say it again, I will defend people till my dying breath if I know they didn't do something wrong. You know why? Because I would want somebody to do that for me. I have no reason to lie. I have no reason to make up facts. All of these things that you're going to hear today, everything you've heard over on our blog, everything that you've heard on the radio has been factual, spoken, shown, played, recorded, transcripts in court. It's not like I invented any of this shit. Are you kidding me? And so people like Jerry Capisci will come along, and I'm gonna bring this up when we come back from the break because I think it's important. The day after the mistrial takes place, Jerry writes up this, which I was shocked he wrote 7 paragraphs for once. Usually it's 2 and you pay the $7 a month or whatever it is. But Jerry Capisci was at the trial, I believe, 2 or 3 days. The first time I saw him, he was there all at 10 minutes and left. The second time that he was there, the judge yelled at him because he refused to acknowledge and stand up and respect the jury. Jerry knows better than that, and the judge gave him a tongue lashing. The third time I believe I saw him, he was hovering down at the end of the hall, trying to talk to people. And so, from my perspective, for Jerry Capisci to come out and say, well, it was 11-1 jury count, 9-3 jury count on 2 of the charges, blah, 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 he doesn't know. The truth is he doesn't know. Not for 100% certainty. To me, it doesn't matter. 11-1, 9-3, 9-2, it doesn't matter to me. The point is there wasn't enough to convict Joey Merlino. But you don't hear anybody say that. Instead, what they fucking say to you is, oh, it was real close, he got lucky. How? He walked the fuck out. Government was embarrassed, they couldn't prove their case. End of fucking story. Why does everybody have to make it something else it isn't? And Jerry's sources, see, when you say sources, that means you heard from a guy who heard from a guy who heard from a guy. That's not hearing it directly. That's hearing it from his sources, which are probably the FBI, because the majority of the articles that Jerry Capisci writes are geared towards defending the federal government and the FBI. You would be very hard-pressed to find an article written by Jerry Capisci where he lambasts the FBI. You'd be very hard-pressed to find an article that he writes calls the FBI out of their bullshit and the government out of their bullshit. But that's what he does. That's his writing style. I can't knock him for that, but at the same point, call it down the middle. I can't listen. If I thought for one fucking second Joey Merlino did any of this, I would fucking say so. I think I've been on record as saying I'll say anything, anytime, any place, anywhere. And yeah, it does cause problems for me because of my mouth and my opinion. But it's my opinion. And people often handle this one of 2 ways with me. They either threaten me like a bunch of dunces because they're clueless and they're brainless, or they approach me and say, you know what, that wasn't really fair. Let's talk. Get to know me, understand my perspective. Maybe I'm not the person you think I am. And 9 times out of 10 when that happens and I have a dialogue, I end up being wrong. And I'm a man, I'll admit it when I'm wrong. I got no problem with that. I don't hide behind shit that I say. I don't hide behind anything. I never have and I never will. I'm a nice guy. I think people like me. Once they meet me, they kind of realize, you know what, the guy's not such a fucking creep after all, because I'm really not. But I have a job to do, and this is what I do. It's entertainment. It's knowledge, it's history, it's fact. Do I get things wrong? Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody who tells you that they get everything right 100% of the time is full of fucking shit. But at least, unlike some other people like the Post, the fucking Daily News, Jerry Capisci, George Anastasia, which I'll get into him today too, at least I'm honest. I tell you when I make a mistake. Or if I'm wrong about somebody, I tell you. That's just the way it is. I think that that's what's fair. I don't let anybody twist my arms. I don't let anybody twist my tits. I don't let anybody twist my feet. I do what I want to do. And if somebody has a beef, they come to me like a gentleman and we discuss it. That's how this is supposed to operate. Not somebody faking that they're J.R. Rubio sending me tweets, oh, you cocksucker, and saying all kinds of other filthy things. Because I know who that guy is. And he's a rat. So it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me because, you know, it's amazing when you get threats like this. There's a pattern to what they say. And I know exactly who it is now. And the guy's a chump. He's a loser. He's a nobody. He's a rat. And that's what rats do. They hide behind another fucking name to try to intimidate somebody, but they get the wrong fucking guy. I'm not, you can ask my attorney, you can ask my friends. I'm not intimidated by a fucking person. That's just not how it works. I can get caught off guard. But all that being said, we come back from the break. We're going to talk about the Joey Merlino trial. I got 12 points I want to get across. I don't want to digest the whole entire trial because we've been regurgitating this for weeks, but I think I want to lay a foundation for why Rubio's full of shit, why the government's full of shit, what I think is going to happen moving forward as far as legally speaking for Joey. I want to get into the Federal Rule 608 and 609 because it's important because I have some news regarding tapes and stuff like that I think you need to know. And then we're going to talk about a couple other things. We're going to talk about some mob movies just because a lot of people keep asking me what my favorite movies are and why. I'm going to talk about Frank Sheeran a little bit. I am not going to do a biography on him today. I don't have time for all of that. You can look it up for yourself, but I'll give you a couple of tidbits and why I think that the movie The Irishman is going to be superb and why I think it's an important movie to see. It's one of the last films of its type that will come out, and the historical implications are just fantastic. And that's what I really like and understand and just get excited for is the history. Interpretations of people I'm not a big fan of, but when it's historically at least accurate from certain perspectives and deals with a lot of historical instances, to me that's really cool. I really like that kind of stuff. And there's a couple of questions I got, one of which I'm just not going to answer just out of respect for people I may or may not know. I'm just not going to go there. And I've always said that, and that's always going to be my rule, and I'll say it again for anybody that doesn't know. If you ask me a question and I don't answer it, one of two things has happened. Either one, I've answered it before. Two, that's probably three things. Two, I don't answer it because it involves like a very in-depth question and I want to get to as many as I can. Or three, I may know the person you're talking about and I may not want to get into that because it's not my business to put their business out there, and I respect them enough to just not go there. It's not an act of cowardice. It's not hiding behind a veil. It's just out of respect for other people. There are people that could have put my business out there a million times and chose not to, so I respect them enough not to do the same for them. So if I don't answer it, that's why I'm just not going to get into certain things, especially when certain types of questions can be geared towards salacious bullshit. I don't get into that. And if anybody I know, and I'm not speaking about Joey Merlino or anybody like this, but if I know somebody that's under indictment or going through a trial, I'm not going to answer a single fucking question about them. They got enough problems. I'm not going to like put business out there that's none of my business. And that is what it is. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to wrap up the Joey Merlino trial, answer a couple questions, talk about some mob movies, talk about Frank Sheeran a little bit, and I'm going to talk about George Anastasia and Jerry Capisci, and there's a reason why. I've spoken at length about this before, but I think people sort of get lost in translation, and I know that my friend Angel's probably going to kick me in the nuts for fucking acknowledging certain things, but you know what? I'm honest. I'm brutal. I just put it out there, and I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks at this point, so that's just the reality of it. So when we come back, we're going to get into all that. Thanks for hanging in the last 2 weeks, too, because I know I've got a lot of questions I got to get to, and I haven't had time. I've just been so busy. But you can follow us on Twitter at Real Mob Talk 7. You can check us out on Facebook at Mob Talk Radio, Mob Talk Radio True Crime Blog. There's all kinds of links on the Facebook page. Give us a like, give us a dislike, send a threat, send hatred. Do what you do. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. We are talking the Joey Merlino trial. Now, before the break, and this isn't going to be hour show on the Merlino trial. I don't think it's going to take enough to cover that, and I want to get to just a couple of other things. So we might run a little over today. But let's talk about evidence for a minute. One of the important things in any trial is evidence. Now, I'm just going to mention a couple of things. When transcripts don't mention any legality on your behalf, when wiretaps really don't mention any legality on your behalf, I find it hard to believe that there's proof. As far as Kreisberg and his testimony goes, it was very different from Rubio's. Nobody could really put Joey Merlino into the medical cream bullshit. There really just wasn't any substantial proof other than Rubio's mouth and what Kreisberg alleges. Allegations based on hearsay shouldn't... Unfortunately, they're admissible in court, but the problem with it is that when you don't have anything factually to back that up, that's a big issue. First of all, Rubio was under Patsy Perello. As we all know, 46 of the 49 defendants took plea deals, including Patsy Perello, and he got hammered in sentencing. Rubio was Perello's guy. And how Rubio even came around Joey Merlino to begin with, per what I heard in court, which is factual, is more or less Rubio wanted to set up a Medicaid medical fraud type of thing, and it was through Perello that Rubio ends up down in Florida to try to set this up. The problem is Rubio gets caught selling drugs, and then as a result of that, makes a deal with the FBI. The FBI wants Joey Merlino caught into something. They want him arrested because they got a hard-on for him. Could Rubio go after him? And that's essentially how Rubio sort of gets involved in all this mess. And this is how Merlino gets dragged into it, basically because Rubio did not want to do time. And his way out of it was to somehow try to pull Joey Merlino into the mix. And that's... So the fact that we know that and how that was set up leads me to 12 major points. And these are important points because it exonerates Joey Merlino from my perspective. It exonerates him from evidence as far as I'm concerned. And just, you can take it as you want, but I'm telling you that just there isn't enough to do it. Number one, he admitted he made $509,000 from the FBI while he was an informant. Okay. Number two, he admitted to assaulting somebody who owed him money, which was against his cooperation agreement. Number three, he admitted lying to the FBI, judges, and the prosecutors, which was also against his agreement. He admitted to beating on his wife, domestic violence, which was also against his agreement. He admitted to having a lurid affair with someone else, which was also against his agreement. He admitted that he blackmailed the FBI because he felt he wasn't getting paid enough money, which is how he pulled George Anastasia into this mix as far as like claiming he was going to sell his story, which should be against his agreement. He admitted that he wiped and factory reset his phone with no oversight from the FBI whatsoever, which is also against his agreement. When you tape somebody, there is a chain of evidence that you have to follow, and when you make a tape, you hand the tape to your FBI handler. This is how it works. He didn't. For 98 of 114 days, he went unsupervised while he was a cooperator and didn't hand over tapes, didn't hand over entire tapes. He claims that he wiped his phone due to pornography. These are all problems. He admitted that he continuously committed crimes while under his agreement. He admitted to selling drugs, which was against Patsy Perello's wishes. He admitted breaking into a doctor's home and stealing $30,000 in money orders. Under oath, Rubio acknowledged that Joey Merlino never committed any acts of violence or ever issued a threat of violence. He admitted that he broke laws, which is why he is remanded into custody. He also admitted, he really had no choice to admit because the tapes played from prison said that he was going to milk this fucking thing for all he could get. He was going to write a book with George Anastasia, and he hoped that that cocksucker got 40 years. He's talking about Joey Merlino in that tape. Now, taking those 12 things into consideration, when you have someone who is going to testify for the federal government, and he's admitting to breaking every cooperation agreement that he's made. He admits to busting crimes. He admits to lying to prosecutors, to judges, to the FBI, the people that are protecting him. Then how can you believe anything this guy says? He tried to drag Joey Merlino into the bookmaking. This was not a Joey Merlino thing. Without going into the Costa Rican bookmaking company called Chris, Rubio was working for Chris through a guy named Mickey, and Rubio's job for $700 a week was to basically pay people off and collect winnings, losers, etc., etc., etc. You understand where I'm going with that. The problem is $300,000 somehow got into the hands of Rubio. It disappears. Rubio tries to blame Augie Camacho for it, tries to blame everybody else for it. So of that $300,000, it goes missing. The Chris people are pissed off. They want to go after him. Rubio buys 3 luxury cars in that month that the money goes missing. So he steals from Chris. Then he has a problem. He has a big problem. They want their fucking money, right? So what does he do? He reaches out to Joey Merlino, who is his friend. He asks Joey to get him out of a jam. First of all, Joey wants nothing to do with it. But Joey argues that principle is the principle. If you owe somebody money, you just pay them the money. Come up with something. If you don't got any money, tell them you're busted. Do anything you can. Just try to pay him off. He needed Joey to save his ass. And Joey effectively, for the most part, I think it's universally accepted that Joey did. Out of a friendship. There was no business ties. And this was one of these things that Rubio repeatedly tried to do, is sucker and pull Joey into the fucking drama. He tried to pull Joey into the medical cream bullshit. At no time during a meeting between Wayne Kreisberg, Augie Camacho, Anthony Cirillo, and J.R. Rubio is Joey Merlino mentioned. Instead, what you have is Rubio setting up the whole thing, talking about Patsy, talking about the money they can make, talking about co-reps, and all the stuff that goes inside of this medical cream fraud bullshit. At not one fucking time is Joey Merlino mentioned. At no time, the government showed copies of checks that were written out to different people. Joey Merlino's name was never written in any of those checks, so why is that evidence important? Why is that evidence being shown? If it has nothing to do with Joey Merlino, if it doesn't have any evidentiary value as showing how the money transfers from A to B, B being Joey Merlino, where's the evidence? Wayne Kreisberg testified to a lot of things, but the problem with Wayne Kreisberg's testimony is he couldn't even put Joey involved in this crime. He could say, well, I saw Joey, pick up money at a bar one time. In a dim-lit bar with a lot of people and a lot of noise, he could see denominations in an envelope. Get the fuck out of here. Meanwhile, Kreisberg's still living in the house that the government was supposed to seize because he has to pay penalties. Huge, huge fines. He tells the court, well, I've paid 3/4 of what I owe, which was $20 million. 3/4 of $20 million is not $2 million. His math is fucking off. When he's asked, are you still living in the house? Well, yeah, but I gave him the deed. So you handed the deed over to the federal government? Well, no, not yet. Well, why not? Well, it'll happen after trial, which means the government probably chances are going to let him keep the fucking house due to his testimony. He's another one in court who admitted he didn't want to do a day in jail. But yet this is a guy, Wayne Kreisberg, who owned 30 fucking scam companies. 30, not one, not two, 30. This is a guy that was making somewhere between $12 and $20 million a month or every couple of months. He kept all his money. So the point I'm trying to make to you is that Kreisberg has been involved in these type of scams for a long, long time. This was not after Joey Merlino comes around. This is way prior to Joey Merlino, way after Joey Merlino. But Kreisberg realizes that he needs a bigger fish, and that bigger fish is going to be Joey Merlino. Same thing with Rubio. Rubio realizes we're going to need another fish. And that's exactly what this is. It's a setup of epic proportions. At no time did they ever play a single tape in court that made Joey Merlino look like he had done anything wrong, other than just trying to be a friend and be supportive. If Joey Merlino is guilty of anything, and I've said this 100 times, it's picking a dipshit friend like Rubio, trusting somebody. That's the only crime here. His crime is being a friend to somebody who couldn't return that loyalty. Now, I want to talk about Federal Rule 608 and Federal Rule 609, and there's a reason why. I'm going to make an argument here that, first of all, let me say this. There are more tapes that are in the possession, I believe, of the defense, which has Rubio saying some really horrible shit. From what I heard, and when I say heard, meaning somebody told me this that has more direct knowledge of this than me, that there's over 300 tapes of Rubio saying some really disturbing shit about a lot of people. Horrible things. Yet those tapes aren't admissible in court. Now, here's my argument. Anytime you're at a trial, I don't care if it's a fucking circuit court, traffic court, whatever fucking court you want to pick, federal, state, whatever. When you are accused of a crime, they can use a morality argument against you, especially if you have priors. So, if I'm in court for murder, right, and I have priors of violence, that tends to lend itself to the idea that technically I could probably have some propensity for violence because in my past I've done it. Now, we can argue the morality of that or whether that's legal or should be legal or not. But the point is that if you're going to take a case like racketeering, fraud, gambling, extortion, whatever the fuck it is, and you want to use Joey Merlino's past against him as some sort of a moralistic character flaw, then fine. That's fair game, right? What isn't fair game is when you take 3 fucking guys, 2 of the 3 being wife beaters, scam artists, scumbag jerk-offs, and junkies. If you're going to take their word for it, that their opinion or that their facts of the story are the way they say it is, then why can't you use that moral argument against them? And yes, they used the domestic violence against Rubio, but there was more to it than that wasn't admissible into court. One of the things that Judge Sullivan had said, there was a huge argument between the government, Edwin Jacobs, and the judge. And it's what's admissible, what isn't, and the judge repeatedly said, I'm not going to allow this and have a sidebar on this argument of 608 and 609 because J.R. Rubio is not on trial. He should be. If you are going to allege that Joey Merlino is the boss of the Philadelphia Mafia, and you're going to make assertions about him, which have never been proven, mind you, other than what the FBI says, and we know how accurate they are. If you're going to say that, and make that assertion, and make that allegation, then why aren't tapes of Rubio saying atrocious things on prison, why are they not admissible? If we have the right to allege and make assertions about Joey Merlino, we have absolutely the right to go after a federal informant, somebody who is very much involved in crime on every fucking end of the scale, then you should have the right to play those tapes. Let the jury hear what a jerk-off scumbag he really fucking is. How does that taint the jury? That's the truth. That's who these people are. They're liars, junkies, scumbag, rat fucks. That's who they are. You should be able to admit those tapes. Now, what is Federal Rule 608 and 609? Federal Rule 608 states a witness's credibility may be attacked or supported by testimony about the witness's reputation for having a character for truthfulness or untruthfulness, or by testimony in the form of an opinion about that character. But evidence of truthful character is admissible only after the witness's character for truthfulness has been attacked. So in other words, if Rubio is a lying sack of shit, which he is, he can be attacked as his he can be attacked using character because he's been untruthful. The point of the argument is providing evidence to support that in the form of a rebuttal. And in layman's terms, it's like, first of all, if we know this cocksucker's a liar, and he's admitted to lying a million times, then why can't we use evidence in the form of a rebuttal by the government saying that he's doing the alleged right thing by telling the truth? Well, motherfucker, if you haven't been telling the truth, I got 15 tapes that are going to show what a scumbag lying sack of shit you are. However, then you move to Rule 609, and it's sort of the complete opposite. Rule 609 states, except for a criminal conviction under Rule 609, extrinsic evidence is not admissible to prove specific instances of a witness's conduct in order to attack or support the witness's character for truthfulness, but the court may, on cross-examination, allow them to be inquired into if they are probative of a character for truthfulness or untruthfulness thereof. Simply stating that if the witness, if his character is being challenged for being truthful or untruthful, then you have the right under cross-examination to ask him about those things. But apparently this 608 and 609 are the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. It's a bullshit fucking law. It's hypocrisy in every stretch of the fucking imagination. The point is this. In layman's terms, let's make this simple for the people, even for myself. The bottom line is if you're going to attack my character, right, and you've got two people testifying against me, and I'll use my case for an instance, okay? Let's give a really good example here. I was charged with a bunch of stuff. The state had a bunch of cooperators. They were going to testify against me. My attorney informed me that, this is sort of like a deathbed confession. They're going to come in and they're going to say, we did all of this, but it was his idea. He was the guy, the mastermind behind it all. And the jury has a tendency of believing people like that, which I found to be a fucking joke, but that's the truth. That's usually the way that a jury will look at it. They're trying to redeem themselves. Well, they're redeeming themselves because they don't want to go to fucking jail. Meanwhile, the two pricks that were going to testify against me had 30 fucking charges to my 2. So if you want to look at a morality or a character reference here, prior to this, nothing. I got a clean record. Clean. You look at their record prior, forget about it. Stacked from the floor to the fucking ceiling. Then they're charged with 30 fucking indictments other than the one I'm involved in with them. And a jury's going to believe that I make, let's say, a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. I did what they accused me of doing. Let's make no bones about it. I was guilty as fuck. But the thing is that if you hold me up and these two other fucking scumbags up, they look like a fucking demon. And me, it looks like, I got involved in some stupid shit. I got busted, whatever. And so at the end of the day, the point I'm making is that if you're going to argue morality, then let's argue the morality of everybody involved. I think the jury should have a right to see what the opposition, what the informants are. Because let me tell you the truth, if I'm at a murder trial and I'm on a jury, and here's a guy who's committed one murder in his life, maybe it was a fucking accident, maybe it was vehicular homicide, and two people are testifying against him, and they've got 7 or 8, 9, 10 DUIs because they didn't learn from the first one, how the fuck am I going to take what they have to say as fucking factual or good when I've got a guy that did something once, God forbid something happened horrible, but these fuckers have done this shit repeatedly. It's a corrupt system. It always has been. As long as the FBI gets what the fuck they want, they're a bunch of happy campers. There needs to be a new system. First of all, these RICO laws got to fucking go anyway. You get triple the time for the first offense. And I think that what there needs to be is less opportunities for some jerk-off scumbag junkie who gets caught selling drugs. Stop rewarding people. First of all, and this is the last I'm going to say about it because I got to move on to another subject. But here's my thing. When I went to trial, I knew what the fuck I did. I had no compunctions about what I did. I knew the hammer was going to fall either way. I took a plea bargain because it was a lot better than what I was given. And guess what? The judge still gave me 20 fucking years. For a first-time offense. First-time offense. Then they reduced the fucking sentences to concurrent, blah, 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 and you know how that goes. But I got lucky. I got lucky because the judge looked at me and realized something was fucked up in the story he was being told, and instead of fucking throwing me behind the wall for 20 fucking years, he cut me a break. And believe me, I took the break. But I never fucking uttered a word about what other people did. This was about what I did. And I don't think that those two fucking jerk-offs who testified against me should have been rewarded for a goddamn thing. Why are they getting rewarded? I'm a mastermind? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm the fucking mastermind? The thing is that we all got involved. Me and my three co-defendants. We all got involved in the same fucking thing. To be honest with you, their end of it was a lot more severe than mine. I'm not stupid enough to do things in broad daylight. I'm not stupid enough to steal a car to do shit. This is shit they did. I'm not dumb like them. But they did what they did, and I was involved. And the bottom line is, and always will be, all three of us knew what the fuck we were getting involved in. So why should they get a better deal? Why should they be treated like they're morally superior to me when they were involved in the same shit I was? But no, they tell on the mastermind, and then all of a sudden they get a little slap on the fucking wrist. That's the point I'm trying to make. At some point, we have to stop rewarding people for telling on everybody else. Accept what the fuck you did and go to prison. You know how many guys go to prison, never open up their fucking mouth, do 40 years for somebody else? That's loyalty. People will say that's stupid, but that's loyalty. You know what? That's loyalty because you say, you know what? I did this. I was involved in it. I'm not going to tell on everybody else. Fuck them. I'm going to be a man. I'm going to do my time, and I'm going to go do what I got to do. Pay my debt to society. But it's become a system that rewards rats and imbeciles and junkies and lowlives. It rewards them. Hey, you want a fucking house? Just testify against Joey One Arm, Jimmy the Woman, Joey Bag of Donuts. Just testify against him. We'll give you a fucking house and $500,000. How's that sound? If you make it hard to get deals, if you just take away a fucking reward system, take away the reward system for rats. That's the bottom line. That's what needs to happen. So, where do we go from here as far as their Merlino issue? And where we go from here is this. I don't know if the government is going to retry this case. They haven't told March 6th to do it, but it's really going to be up to the government. Now, if we believe the numbers that Jerry Capisci reported, then, you know what, they might lean more towards retrying him. But how much more fucking money do we want to pay for this bullshit? Somebody said to me the government always has a blank check and they'll do exactly what they want because they want a high conviction rate. And the government does have a high conviction rate. But at the end of the day, I don't think there was enough evidence. There really wasn't. They made assertions that aren't accurate. That's the reality. So, does he get retried? In my gut opinion, I believe he probably will, only because the government's a sore loser. They always have been. They're always more confident than they need to be. There are tapes that they argued against because they knew if they were played, they were fucking done. The injustice here, the true injustice, is creeps like Kreisberg, creeps like fucking J.R. Rubio. Get away with whatever to do, as long as the prize that they hold up in front of their fucking faces is bigger than them. It happened to John Gotti, happened to John Gotti Jr., it's happened to a million other people. The injustice is that there is no justice because these rats are allowed to do what they do. So, evidence didn't suggest that Joey did anything. I don't believe he did anything. I think going to another trial, I think Joey's going to fucking win that one too. The government doesn't have enough. They're relying on junkies. They're not relying on reputable people. This will be a totally different case if these two other guys had never done anything in their life, and it's one of them things. Never been in trouble. But look at the shit that they did, the 12 points. Rewind this show, go back and listen to the 12 points. If you can tell me based on those 12 points that Joey Merlino fucking did something, I'll eat a bag of shit on camera. They got nothing. Nothing happened. Joey's innocent. Get the fuck over it. And for the scumbag, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, we're going to go to a break. For the scumbag that sent me the fucking message about people murdering people and this, what fucking murders are you talking about? Last time I checked, motherfucker, you were only guilty of something if you were found guilty of something. Assertions, allegations are simply fucking that. How many times the United States government lied about trying to kill Fidel Castro? Oh, no, we didn't try to do that. And then guess what? 40 fucking years later, it comes out that's exactly what they fucking did. Stop believing everything the government says. I'm not anti-government. I'm just anti-bullshit. If Joey Merlino was guilty, I would tell you he was guilty. So for anybody that wants to argue that, go to the trial next time. Sit in there and listen for yourself. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Frank Sheeran and some movies. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Mob Talk. We just wrapped up the Joey Merlino trial, and like I said, as we move forward to, March 6th is when the determination will be made if they will retry him. I will definitely be on top of that. And just really quickly, listen, if you're ever in New Jersey, specifically in Collingswood, go visit Angelo's Restaurant. The name of the restaurant is the Kitchen Consigliere. It is in Collingswood. It is Italian food like you have never seen. Very often in life, I'm reminded of the Sunday dinners with the big family and the gravy and all of that stuff. If you're looking for an atmosphere that's traditional, if you're looking for an atmosphere that's family-oriented and it feels like home, all my life I've been looking for restaurants that when I walk in, I feel like I'm sitting at my grandfather's kitchen table again as a kid or as a teenager. That's the kind of feel you're always looking for. Someplace that makes you feel maybe not special, but nostalgic. If you're looking for a place like that, visit Kitchen Consigliere. Angelo Lutz runs the place. He's a great cook, gregarious guy. And do yourself a favor. You want a good home-cooked meal. You want an atmosphere that makes you feel good inside, and just an atmosphere that is fantastic to be around. Go to his restaurant. I believe he's on Twitter. You can type in Kitchen Consigliere and the restaurant will come up, or type it into Google and find the directions. But go out there and have a good meal. Have a good time. Relax. Live, what is it? Live, laugh, love. So check out Angelo's joint. If you go in there, tell him Jeff from Mob Talk sent you. And, you'll be treated like family there. It's a great place. I have personally never been there. I have not been to New Jersey in a couple of months, but my next stop will be there. But from everything that I've heard from anybody who's ever been there, they love the place. Angelo makes it a great place to be. Food is fantastic. So do yourself a favor. Go on Twitter, type in Kitchen Consigliere. Like him, follow him, tweet him, retweet. But go out there and have a good meal. Have a good experience, have a good meal, and just enjoy it. Angelo's a good guy, and I cannot imagine for any stretch of the imagination that you will not have a fantastic experience. And no, that is not a advertisement. It's just simply, he's got a good joint, he's got a good place, he's a great cook. Just go enjoy it and have a good time. Anything I could do to help anybody that has been kind to me, I'm going to do. And then that's just the reality of it. All right, so that being said, we need to move on to, this is sort of like a movie sort of theme. The Irishman is a film starring Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino. And Robert De Niro, I believe, is playing Frank Sheeran. If you're unfamiliar with the premise for the film, you can go out and get the book, which is written by Charles Brandt, Brandt. It's called I Heard You Paint Houses. And I Heard You Paint Houses is a reference to blowing brains out, to being a hitman. When you paint a house, you're painting it with blood. Frank Sheeran, who was Irish from Darby, Pennsylvania, really, first of all, for many that don't know, he was in World War II. He did serve 411 combat days. Once he got out of the military, he ended up driving a truck. He was friends with Angelo Bruno. But a lot of people get this misconception that he began with Angelo Bruno, and he didn't. He ended up meeting Russell Bufalino. For those that don't know who Russell Bufalino is, he is one of the biggest mob bosses that ever lived. He had political connections that could probably rival Frank Costello at this point, at least at that point. Just from a historical aspect, Russell Bufalino was involved in a lot of different of history's things, okay? Frank Sheeran ends up remotely getting involved with Bufalino, and Bufalino trusts him to take care of some things for him. He ends up lending Frank Sheeran to the Philadelphia mob. He ends up lending him to Jimmy Hoffa to protect Jimmy Hoffa. Like I said, I don't want to go into a total biography on Frank Sheeran, but let's just get a couple of facts out there. He was a labor union official. That was sort of a gift that Jimmy Hoffa gave him. He was Jimmy Hoffa's hitman. He was the mob's hitman. He was Jimmy Hoffa's bodyguard. He's allegedly to have killed 40 people. He was a very high official in the Teamsters Union. And Frank Sheeran was involved in some really, really, really big events in history. Now, for everything that I'm about to say, there are going to be people that are going to say that's not true. This is the one time I'm going to back up the FBI. I normally don't do that, but this is the one time that I will. When Jimmy Hoffa was killed, number one on the suspect list was Frank Sheeran. Frank Sheeran was a non-Italian who had insane power. And when I mean power, I don't necessarily mean power in terms of he could tell people what to do, but he had privilege. Maybe privilege is a better way of saying it. He was the highest ranking non-made member of the Italian mob, probably in the history of the mafia. Other than, say, like Meyer Lansky. He just was trustworthy. He was a tough guy. And according to Frank Sheeran, he was responsible for some very interesting things. The first thing is he killed Joey Gallo. Can I prove that to you? Absolutely not. What I can tell you is that the reason why Frank Sheeran was used in that hit was because they needed somebody that was a non-Italian, somebody that wasn't well known, and it was as simple as that. Frank Sheeran walked in, popped him, and it was over. Frank Sheeran admitted to that. Frank Sheeran took a lie detector test and passed. I believe Frank Sheeran killed Joey Gallo. The second thing is Frank Sheeran is the one who killed Jimmy Hoffa. Now, I don't want to get into a whole epic storyline here of why Jimmy Hoffa was killed. There's a lot of reasons, but the most important reason is Jimmy Hoffa wouldn't shut the fuck up. Jimmy Hoffa goes to prison. The mob used Jimmy Hoffa for what they needed, and Jimmy Hoffa won't shut the fuck up from behind the wall. In fact, when Jimmy Hoffa gets out of prison, he wants to run for the fucking head of the Teamsters again. But by this point, the mob had who they needed in to run the Teamsters, somebody who was a little bit quieter and more bendable than Jimmy Hoffa. So Jimmy Hoffa makes threats that either they're going to let him run or he's going to open his mouth. Guess what? At that point, you got to fucking go. They had had it. They had had it. There were issues that were going to come up that involved Las Vegas. And Alan, who was it? Green? Oh, God, I can't remember at the time. But that's a big problem. He had issues with Tony Provenzano. And so what ends up happening is Frank Sheeran is told Jimmy Hoffa has to go. He's got to go. Now, Jimmy Hoffa's a smart guy. He's not going to get in the car with just anybody. He's not going to go just anywhere. So he asks, send Frank. He trusted Frank. He thought with Frank nothing would fucking happen to him. And so effectively, Jimmy Hoffa's waiting outside of the Mackius Red Fox restaurant. Frank pulls up. Jimmy gets in the car. They drive to a suburban house. The minute they walk in the front door, Frank shoots him twice in the back of the fucking head. Jimmy Hoffa's body is then taken to a mortuary nearby and incinerated. So anybody looking for Jimmy Hoffa's body in Giant Stadium is bullshit. Anybody digging up a cornfield in fucking Indiana isn't going to find Jimmy Hoffa. The FBI believes that's the most credible story. Frank Sheeran passed lie detector tests, and he's got no reason to lie. To get that close to Jimmy Hoffa, you gotta be cunning and you have to be somebody that's trusted. And Frank Sheeran was the guy. Also, allegedly, Frank Sheeran took the sniper rifles that were used in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. They came via Frank Sheeran and were handed to David Ferry, and if you look up who David Ferry is, you'll understand that he gave David Ferry the weapons, who then transported them to Dallas. Now, I can't prove that, and I'm not going to get into a whole JFK conspiracy today. But the point of bringing up who Frank Sheeran was is to say this, and maybe I will do a show on Frank Sheeran. But he was a hitman. He was a tough guy. He's 6'5", 300 and some pounds, just a monster. He did work for Russell Bufalino. He was one of Russell Bufalino's most trusted associates. Jimmy Hoffa trusted him and adored him. But Frank had to listen to what Russell said. And Frank did what he had to do. Frank signed affidavits, gave it all up before he died, I believe in 2002. Now, a lot of people are going to speculate and say, Frank Sheeran, he's full of shit. But if you go back and look at the old FBI files, they were on to Frank Sheeran way before this stuff ever came out. The FBI has long said that they thought Frank Sheeran did it. Frank Sheeran has nothing to lose by lying. He has nothing to gain by making shit up. He has nothing to gain by effectively indicting himself. But the one thing he didn't do was talk about anybody else. He just talked about himself. So what this movie is, and what this movie is going to be about, is the relationship between Frank Sheeran and Russell Bufalino, the relationship between Frank Sheeran and Jimmy Hoffa, and the demise of a presidency and the demise of Jimmy Hoffa's life. If you go back to the early 90s movie with Jack Nicholson entitled Hoffa, I believe that was Oliver Stone movie. It's a good film, one of my favorite films, but very inaccurate as far as how it all went down in the end. But I think, realistically, if anyone asks me my opinion, I really do believe Frank Sheeran's story. He's not a rat. He's not a guy that was going to tell on anybody. This is a guy on his deathbed just let it all out. Maybe he felt that he had a moral compunction that he needed to let it out. His daughter, in many ways, backed up a lot of things that he said. Especially when you figure that when Frank Sheeran was questioned about Jimmy Hoffa, he said he was at a wedding in rural Detroit. So he puts himself there by proxy. So there are people that are coming out, pundits that are saying Frank Sheeran's not telling the truth. The problem is the people that are coming out saying that have no relation to this whatsoever. And so the movie is going to be about the life and times of Frank Sheeran, how he got involved with Russell Bufalino, his relationship with Bufalino, his relationship with other bosses like Sam Giancana, Carlos Marcello, and the list just goes on and on and on. Frank Sheeran took part in a lot of historical things, and I think from that perspective, this is going to be one of the last true genre films. Hollywood will bastardize it a bit. That's what they have a tendency of doing. But I think it's going to be highly anticipated. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great film. It's Scorsese. You can't go wrong with Scorsese except for The Departed. I fucking hated that film. But I think it's going to be a good film for all the right reasons. It's going to be the last time you're going to see guys like De Niro and Pacino and Pesci together. That's it. They're all in their 70s. Past this, it gets old. And they're old at this point. So if you want more information on Frank Sheeran, look into Wikipedia or type in Frank Sheeran on Google. A lot of stuff will come up. Go out and buy the goddamn book by Charles Brandt. I Heard You Paint Houses. It's a fantastic book, historically accurate, a fantastic read. One of the best books I've read in the last 10 years. Just because of the historical implications. If you're into the history of it all, that's a good book to have. And if you don't want to believe Frank Sheeran's story, you don't have to believe Frank Sheeran's story. I'm not asking you to believe him. I'm saying he's credible. I'm saying that he backs it up with facts that only people that were there could really know. The FBI did look into this, and they agreed Frank Sheeran likely was the guy who did it. He just knew things that nobody else knew about the crime. He's the one that said that you would find Jimmy Hoffa's DNA in the Lincoln Mark V or whatever it was. He was exactly right about that. So at the end of the day, he never really said anything that was unfactual. And that's just the reality of it. But moving right along, because I don't want to talk too long about the film. The film will be out on Netflix. But that truly, I want to talk about genre films for just 1 second before I move on to two other things. Listen, the mob genre is dying. I've said this for a long time. Mafia movies are not the same. You look at movies like Gangster Squad. You look at movies like Black Mass, which was horrible. The Departed, absolutely awful. It's not so much the acting, it's the storylines. I don't think, and I'll get into this more in a second, but I think the genre is gone. First of all, let's talk about mafia actors for a minute. De Niro, Pesci, Pacino, Harvey Keitel. These guys are all getting old. How long can you play the same guys? You just can't. So there has to be a new group of actors that come forward past this. But really, all mob stuff is the same now. With the exception of, you look at what Scorsese has done with Casino, Goodfellas, and now The Irishman. They're three different sort of time periods. And they're good films. But I think the genre is dying. A lot of people are going to disagree with me. But I think that there is a difference between doing a biopic on somebody versus talking about something from a historical aspect. A historical aspect will always be fascinating and entertaining. A biopic always won't be, because Hollywood bastardizes who people are, and they don't always tell the truth. So I'm really looking forward to seeing The Irishman. They've put out a bunch of photos online of the filming of it. Look up stuff on Frank Sheeran. It's definitely worth your time. So, all right. So I want to move on to some other movies really quick, only because a lot of people have been asking me, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. People ask me all the time what the most historically accurate mob movie I've ever seen is. I would say Goodfellas would be my first choice, but here's the problem I have with Goodfellas. Henry Hill is full of shit. Henry Hill was always full of shit. Henry Hill was nowhere near as big as Henry Hill was in his own mind. So I think Nick Pileggi wrote a great book, but he's also taking the story from a rat. And let's be honest, probably not 100% truthful. He made himself out to be a lot higher on the food chain than he really was at the end of the day. There were even things like the Lufthansa heist, which really Tommy DeSimone was responsible for putting together with other people. And in the film, it sort of makes it look like Henry was responsible for that, but he really wasn't. Henry didn't even get kickback from that. So there's some distortion of reality. Now, as far as the violence, I think it's absolutely exactly where it needs to be, especially during that time period. Every decade seems to have the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 90s. You don't see a lot of murders these days, especially from organized crime. However, at the end of the day, if you go back just 25 years or so, back to the 80s in New York was absolutely just bodies all over the place. even in the 60s and early 70s. But I think from the perspective of violence, Goodfellas is probably the most accurate. Now, as far as The Godfather goes, if you like operas, soap operas, that is, then The Godfather's a great film. Godfather's a great film in general. Is it realistic? Absolutely not. In fact, I can go one step further. A lot of people don't know this, but Russell Bufalino controlled every single aspect of that film. The first film and the second film. The script had to be reviewed by him. If he saw something he didn't like, he had it changed. He had that kind of power. He had Paramount in his pockets, and he made sure that Francis Ford Coppola did what the fuck he said and not what Francis Ford Coppola wanted to do. Coppola's never come out and said that, but Coppola has been on record as saying he had a really awful time shooting that film. And that's one of the reasons, because Russell Bufalino controlled that narrative. A lot of people don't know that, but that is very true. But The Godfather, from a certain narrative, is a good film, but it's unrealistic. The pageantry, the sort of the like, I want to almost argue the sort of kings and queens type of atmosphere to it was bullshit. It's a great film. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorites. But historically accurate, no. Accurate from the storyline, absolutely not. Road to Perdition is one of my favorite films. That is highly accurate to me, especially when you look at Chicago and Indiana. Irish Mafia there, Dean O'Banion, and the fighting between Capone and the east side and the west side of Chicago. To me, that's historically accurate. It's a good film. It shows treachery. It shows honor. It shows just everything that encompasses what organized crime was back in the 20s and 30s. So for me, Tom Hanks was incredible in that film. That's one of my favorite films. Very accurate in a lot of different ways. The brutality of it, the treachery of it, the mob boss protecting his son at all costs. To me, that's very, very, very accurate, and it's one of my favorite ones. Mean Streets is another one. Mean Streets encapsulates a lot of the violence that is in that lifestyle, but there's one particular thing that I think is above all of them, and that is The Sopranos. Granted, The Sopranos was filmed from the aspect of from the inside the family out, but I think as far as dialogue, I think as far as the lunacy of everything, The Sopranos was very, 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 very accurate. I think that is probably one of the most accurate portrayals I've ever seen in my life. I know there are some things that are coming out, such as The Neighborhood with William DeMeo. Don't buy it. I think it's a great idea, but it's from the 80s, and that's fantastic, but you're never gonna fucking be The Sopranos. I'm not saying that's what he's attempting to try to do, but it seems like there are a lot of these productions popping up left and right, and they're all trying to piggyback off The Sopranos, and you're not going to do it. You're never going to have another Jimmy Gandolfini. You're never going to get Tony Sirico, Vinny Pastore, and all of these guys. Frank Vincent, God rest his soul, passed away. But The Sopranos really had it all. The treachery, the murder, the mayhem, the dialogue was fantastic. You got to see what being in that life does to families, and that's something that you really haven't seen before. Maybe with the exception of Goodfellas, when Karen Hill's flushing coke down the toilet. But at the end of the day, even Casino was a great film. But if Casino had focused, say, on Anthony Spilatro versus Frank Lefty Rosenthal, it might have been a different film altogether. But for my money, The Sopranos has always been the best adaptation I've ever seen to the life. So if you're looking for something that is close to being realistic, what I would do is watch The Sopranos, but I would smash it with Goodfellas. Take the violence from Goodfellas and sort of the politics of Goodfellas and smash it with The Sopranos, and you've really got something there. And I don't think you're ever going to see anything like that again. I just, sometimes the dialogue and the storylines are great, and just the idea of the lunacy of what took place in The Sopranos is very, very accurate from the extent of how petty things can be, how political things can be. Sometimes a murder is just a murder. So that's my answer for that. If you're looking for something that's completely as close as you can possibly get without being in it, It's going to be Goodfellas and Sopranos. Everything else is secondary to that. I wish William DeMeo well in The Neighborhood or whatever, but it just doesn't interest me because I think the genre is done. How many times can you... mob movies always have the same storyline: murder, love, mayhem, righteousness. It's all the same, and it's just recycled, and that's just the reality of it. Okay, so I wanted to get to like 3 questions that I got. The first one being Black Mass was horrible, Johnny Depp was good, but the rest of the cast was a train wreck. I thought the guy who played John Connolly was great in Black Mass. I thought Johnny Depp was fantastic. I thought the fucking storyline was atrocious. I think the guy who played Kevin Weeks was a joke. Just for whatever reason, I didn't like Black Mass either. I watched it like begrudgingly twice, and I suffered through the whole thing. I think Johnny Depp was right on cue. The problem was the storyline was fucked. I think there could have been more sort of gangster. Whitey Bulger was a cutthroat motherfucker, and if they had shown more of that and more of a cloak and dagger thing with the FBI, I think you got a better film, and I think that's why it likely failed. Do you believe Frank Sheeran pulled the trigger? Absolutely, 100%. Frank Sheeran killed Jimmy Hoffa. David Fitzgerald, my buddy, what do you think? What did you think of Witness to the Mob? What's the one film that accurately portrays the life? Goodfellas, The Sopranos, Mean Streets, Witness to the Mob. I did not watch. That's with, who is it, with Nick Turturro or John Turturro? I think it's Nick Turturro. No, John, one of the fucking Turturros. No, I didn't watch it. You know why? Because it was another fucking knockoff trying to piggyback off the HBO Gotti film, and it's just like the film that Chaz Palminteri did, where he played Paul Castellano. So I didn't watch stuff like that just because if you can't buy the lead actor in a film, you can't, like for instance, Bugsy from like the late 80s, early 90s, the movie Bugsy. Oh God, what the fuck is his name? Why is his name Shirley MacLaine's brother? What the fuck? For some reason, I can't think of his name. I can't believe this. Did he have Bugsy's look? Sure. Well, was he Bugsy? No, he was like, if you are enamored and you like somebody too much, it's hard to believe they can be violent, and that's part of the problem. So I think that for a lot of these films, if you can't buy the motherfucker who's the lead actor, you're not going to buy the rest of it. I mean, that's just the reality. You've got to have a good story, but more importantly than a good story, you've got to have a guy that you can believe. If you don't have a guy you can't believe, then what's the fucking point? But for my money, I think that definitely Goodfellas and Sopranos is about as top as you're going to get if you can look past all the bullshit of Henry Hill. All right, so with that, I wanted to jump into one last thing, and I've gone way over time already. I wanted to talk about George Anastasia for just a second. I'm not going to talk about Jerry Capisci today. Just because there's no point. Okay, a lot of people have been asking me what my beef with George Anastasia is, and I'm going to tell you. I have a reason to have a beef with him. It's not because I don't like him, because let me tell you the truth. I am working on a book right now, which is entitled From Your Lips to God's Ears. That will sound familiar to somebody that's listening to my show, and you're right. That's exactly where I got it from, that person. So I'm working on a book, and in it, I sort of talk about what happened. And I was a big George Anastasia fan. I read a lot of his stuff, and I thought he was a great writer. Until he wrote Gotti's Rules. And I don't want to get into, like, that kind of bullshit, and I don't want to talk about John A. Light at all, but I'm going to reference something. Obviously, when you're in that particular field, when you're in that genre, what typically happens is you're not going to get the real story unless you talk to the people that were involved. When those people are rats and informants, you're sort of putting yourself out on a limb, and you're accepting what they say to be fact. Usually what you do in those situations, what I have done, what I will do, what you should do, is look at the transcripts for what they are. Read the transcripts, look at the evidence that's been proven, and then you take that to the person that you're interviewing, and you question them. If something doesn't add up, you ask them why it doesn't add up. In the case of Gotti's Rules, George Anastasia has claimed that he read all the transcripts, he saw this, he saw that, and that's why the book was written. Well, it's not true, because he read the transcripts. About 80% of the stuff that John A. Light does say is not factual. Okay? That's been proven already. I'm not getting into a debate about that. What my issue is that if you're going to write a book and you realize that there's stuff that isn't factual in it, or that you were fooled to some extent, I don't know specifically what happened in that, and I'm not going to allege that, but you lose credibility. And I'll take it a step further. The other issue I have with George Anastasia is that there was an incident involving me in my family. George Anastasia's name was used as someone who was going to target and harass, or to at least acquire a meeting with a family member of mine. And when George was notified about this, he didn't say anything. Didn't come out and speak against it. John A. Light's the one who issued the threat. And I've played those tapes online. As an author, I think you have a duty to separate yourself from your material. If you are writing mafia genre books, you're not a mobster. You're not a gangster. And I think if you allow yourself to be sucked into that, then you become what we call biased. Am I biased? 100%. I've never denied that. I readily admit that. I like who I like and I don't like who I don't like. But the issue is when you're an author, a well-known author at that, and you allow an informant to issue loose threats to somebody else using your name, as a man, you step up and you say, I'm not getting involved in that. I would never condone that. I would never allow that. And it's bullshit and it's wrong. And I apologize that my name was brought into it. But does George Anastasia do that? No. He doesn't say a fucking word. He's more concerned about his career, what people think of him. And these are assertions I'm making about him without knowing him. And he says nothing. So to me, if you're going to say nothing, then that means you condone it. And if you condone it, then you're a piece of shit in my book. The least you could have done. Reach out and say, you know what, this has got nothing to do with me. I'm sorry that happened. You know, whatever. I can take a threat. That's not the issue here. The issue is that my sibling was being used in this, who's got nothing to do with anything that I do. In fact, I'll take it another step further. People don't know this. My whole family will have nothing to do with me because of this shit. And because of John A. Light. And because of the fucking threats or the phone calls that he fucking made to my family to try to silence me. God forbid I tell the truth about what a scumbag he is. Because that's the truth. That's the truth. He can't hide from that. I have proof of that. I've always said this. You got a problem with me, you reach out, you say, this is my problem, let's be adults, let's find a way to fix the issue. What you don't do is go after my family. But that's what these fucking guys do. He knew I wasn't fucking intimidated by him. He knew I thought he was a fucking chump and a joke and a lying dirtbag. So what does he do? He tries to fucking go after my family. Because he thinks he can control me that way. But apparently he doesn't know me as well as he thought he did. Because I don't tolerate that shit, and I won't tolerate that shit. That's what a punk, coward dog does, and that's what he is. He's a punk, and he's a coward, and he's a rat. That's the truth. Now, I said I wouldn't even talk about that jerk off, and I don't want to, but it just pisses me the fuck off. A man doesn't pick up a phone and make a fucking, oh, I'm going to call your brother, I'm going to... Fuck you. Pick up the phone and say what you got to say to me, coward. That's not a tough guy. That's not a gangster. That's a bitch. And I'll tell any judge that. I'll tell any lawyer that. He's a bitch. He's not a man. That's not how a man behaves. So my beef with George Anastasia is he knew all this was going on. And there's something that I could say, but I'm not going to, only because I'm highly protective of my family. Even if they're fucking angry with me and want nothing to do with me over all of this, I'm protective of them. I'm loyal to them. So there's certain things that I can't say. But what makes what George Anastasia didn't do even more egregious is that there's a close proximity there. And one day we're going to talk about that. I obviously can't for legality issues at this point. But that's my point. When somebody like a stool pigeon uses your name, your reputation to make a loose threat to somebody because they're telling the truth and they don't want anybody to know the truth, and you don't try to remove yourself from that, you don't step away from that, you don't stand up for that, say this is wrong, he'll write all these articles alleging that Joey Merlino and John Gotti Jr. and all these other people are criminals, but then he won't step out against the fucker that's making loose threats to remove himself from that accusation? I don't get it. What loyalty does he have to this creep? But that tells me more about George Anastasia more about Anastasia's character than anything else. Because if he had any character, if he had a backbone, and I know there's people that like him, but I have a reason not to. If he had a backbone and he had character, he would have fucked up and stepped away from that. And he would have at least said to me, you know what, he's lying, it's not true, I would never do that, I'm a good guy, I'm an author. He doesn't even do that. Instead, he says nothing. And sometimes when you say nothing, makes it even worse. That's why I don't like George Anastasia. That's why I don't have any respect for George Anastasia. Because of that and that alone. So if I don't like somebody like Jerry Capisci or I don't like somebody like George Anastasia, there's a fucking reason. It's not just because they write articles and they write different articles and I don't agree. I don't like them because they fucking did something to me. Or they did something that I think is disrespectful or out of character of being a man. And that's the bottom line. Now that may piss off a lot of people. They may say, oh, here he goes again. He's ranting about people. Listen, I'm sure that George Anastasia's a nice guy. You know, I'm sure that other people's interactions with him have been good. But his reputation is fucked. Especially because of that book. Chris Casparosa has fought against everything George Anastasia has said. Go to WhitzekMafia.com, JohnnyLightFacts.com. Email Chris Casparosa. Talk to him yourself. He'll be glad to show you fact after fact after fact after fact after fact. It totally makes that book look like what it is, which is a pile of garbage. And so for people that are, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, I'm going to shut the fuck up. Because I didn't want to go down this trail today. The summation of this is George Anastasia should have removed himself from it. He didn't. That's why I have an issue with him. And for those people that are following John A-Light, he's an informant. You people are worshiping the worst of the worst. Guys who have testified against other guys. Guys who have ruined how many countless fucking lives. And yeah, that could be argued both ways, so don't bring that shit to me because I already acknowledged that. This is a guy who lied about a lot of people. This is a guy who can't keep his story straight. This is a guy who threatens, intimidates, and bullies. And you people look up to this guy? Listen, you don't have to like the social media war between John Gotti Jr. and him. You don't have to like any of it. But look at the fucking facts that are in front of your face. Look at how he acts. Look at how he treats people. If you're a gangster, you don't call nobody's family. You deal with it like a man. That's the bottom line. You want to look up to somebody. If you want to look up to gangsters, there's a million people you can look up to. You choose to look up to a rat? I don't get it. I don't get it. But that's what people will do because they all want to piggyback off of him because they all think he has lots of money and, you know, he's doing things. And that's fine. Everybody, you're entitled to like John A-Light. You're entitled to like the informants of the world. You're entitled to feel any way you do. But until you're involved in it, until you have suffered ramifications of it, until you've lost your family because of it, because there's assertions that are made about you in court that you're in a mafia? Get the fuck out of here. He stood in a courtroom and told the judge. He pointed at me and says, he's in the mafia, his whole family's in the mafia. He's a soldier in the mafia, blah, blah, blah. Points at my attorney, and he's on the take. And he works for John Gotti Jr., and he's in the mafia too. Are you fucking kidding me? That's the kind of guy I'm talking about. Mafia. So that's my point. That's my point. He told a fucking federal judge, he's in a, Jeff Canarsi's in a mafia. I am? That's fucking news to me. His whole family's in a mafia. Really? How? Prove it. What? What? Because you invented it? My attorney's in the mafia? Wow, I'd love to meet an attorney that was a made member of the mafia, let me tell you. The stoogery. This is what I call it, the stoogery. And this may be the stupidest thing I ever fucking say on the air, but I'm going to say this. If I was in the fucking mafia, believe me, there wouldn't be a fucking lawsuit. Believe me. Believe me. That's how stupid this is. That's how stupid he is. Stop believing informants. Stop believing liars. Stop believing junkies. Stop believing rats. Stop believing the government. Look at the evidence for yourself. Make your own assertions. Make a calculated, scientific, intelligent fucking assertion about things. If I tell you the sky is green, don't fucking believe it. Go out and look for yourself. Go out and look for yourself. So listen, send your threats, your complaints, your concerns, your comments at Real Mob Talk 7 on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook at Mob Talk Radio. Also check out my buddy Scott William Collier's page, the True Crime page. He is going to be starting a YouTube page that profiles serial killers and stuff like that. I'm going to have a little bit of involvement in that with him as well, but I'm not going to detract from what I am doing. But look for that. That's going to be good. It's going to be a good show. I'm working with him close on that. Scott Williams Collier, great guy. He's from England, a really good friend of mine, sort of my business partner in a lot of things. So he's a great guy. Check out his photography. He's an incredible photographer, and he's a really nice guy. He even has these videos where he's smoking pipes and trying different tobaccos, which is kind of cool. It's relaxing to watch. So Scott's a good guy. Please check out his stuff. Support his stuff like you do anything. Check out Kitchen Consigliere, Kitchen Consigliere, Angelo Lutz. His restaurant. It's a great place, good atmosphere. Give him a like on Twitter. Give him a follow on Twitter. Check out there is a website. I can't riddle it off right now because I'm trying to finish as quick as I can. The most important thing I want anybody to get from today, if you're going to get anything that I said, you don't have to like what I say. You can fucking hate me. A lot of people do. Okay? But let me explain something to you. I am the most loyal person you're ever going to meet. I will never, ever forsake my friendship, my loyalty, my love, my consideration for my friends. I would rather take a bullet. I'd rather go do time than to ever utter a fucking word about anybody else. That's me. Not everybody's designed that way. My attorney tells me all the time, Jeff, you got to stop doing this. You got to stop like being so loyal to not so much. He doesn't say stop being loyal. He says to me all the time, God damn it, you have this old world mentality about everything you do. You refuse to speak to anybody, about anybody, do anything to anybody. That's just me. That's how I operate. I was raised with morals. I was raised with a code. There are things you do, things you don't do. It's not in me to tell on anybody. It's not in me to do it. I would rather do 40 years of jail, prison, than to utter a fucking word about any other individual in this life. Because guess what? I'm not God. I'm not a judge, jury, and executioner. I'm one man. If I do something wrong, I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to do what I got to do as a man. I'm not going to point the finger at anybody else. That's unacceptable behavior. But I'm also not going to tolerate any bullshit from anybody. I've always been that way since I was a kid. My father used to say to me, God rest his soul. He used to say, Jeff, the problem with you is you're a fucking round peg that's being tried, that's essentially being forced through a square hole. He goes, you're a fighter, you're outspoken, and I love you just the way you are, but God damn it, son, you got to learn you can't fight everybody else's battles for them. Let them do it themselves. But guess what? I'm 40, almost 41 years old. I still haven't let somebody fight their own fight on their own. Because if my friends have a problem, guess what? I'm standing right fucking next to them. They got a problem. I got a problem. They need my help. I'm there. They don't even got to ask. My friends know. They got a problem. I'm the first one there, and I'm the last to fucking leave. I put a value on that. Let those fucking rats try that. The only thing they value is themselves. And that's the truth. Thanks for listening to the show today. We will be back next week with all new, brand new topics. And I appreciate for everybody listening to me rant. It's been a long show. And obviously I got some pent up frustrations. Probably some things I shouldn't have said. But, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Nothing I said is untrue. And if anybody can prove that what I said was a lie, go for it. I challenge you to do it. So one of the things we are going to change, we're going to start taking live calls here in a couple weeks. And I'm sure that's going to get really exciting because I'm sure the Rocky Regos of the fucking world and the Fontaine Gambinos of the fucking world, and the little snitches and rat bastards who ain't got the balls to say it to me personally, are going to call in and scream and rant and rave, and I can't wait. Because that's going to be some fun shit. Maybe I shouldn't give them an outlet, but fuck it. It's reality. People want to yell and scream and vent, go right ahead. Because guess what? I can hit hang up at any point. I'll call you to jerk off on the phone. I don't give a fuck. So thanks for listening to the show. You can send me messages over on Facebook. And I'll try to answer questions. Maybe we'll do like a Q&A next week because I know there's a lot of people that got a lot of questions. And we'll just go from there. So everybody have a great, safe weekend. It looks like the weather here in New York City is going to be nice and rainy, my favorite. For those people that I do know that are listening, thanks for supporting what I do, even if you may not agree with what I do. Even if I say things maybe about you or maybe somebody you know that you don't agree with. I still appreciate you reaching out, being a gentleman, being respectful, and shaking hands and saying, what it is. That's a test of a man. When you can let something go. Not everything is important to fight. And sometimes all it takes is hey, you know what? Listen, here's the way it is. Here's the way it should be. Sometimes a friendship can come out of that. Or a mutual respect. I may not like what I do, but you can look at me as a man and say, you know what? You're not so bad. And that's the reality of it. And this sort of thing, you're always going to make enemies. You're going to make some friends. You're going to meet a lot of people. But the bottom line is always going to be, I would rather spend 1,000 days in a basement with nothing but bread and water than 1 second in a cell with a rat. That's the truth. Have a great weekend, everybody.